Welcome back to Rausten. We're going to take one final look at Andaron Saga here. Today, we're going to do a tier list. I've never done a tier list before, so it should be fun. But obviously, I've played through the game once blind, and it took me months. So, we're not going to do a full regular tier list. In fact, it's going to be a run tier list. Something that the concept of I saw from a Danny Doyle video. Basically, it's going to be a tier list of the characters that we use throughout the playthrough. And especially with my spotty, weird memory, as well as only playing through the game once, being blind, missing a lot of stuff throughout the game, throughout certain units and otherwise. Should be interesting, but it's going to be very unique to this playthrough. So if you haven't seen the playthrough, that's unfortunate. You'll miss that part, but it might be fun still to see kind of my opinions and thoughts on certain units and characters. But before we do that, I think it's important that we go back a little bit. And on my finale, Mangs actually dropped a comment about a bug in the game that skips over the character endings, and I probably should have picked up on this, but honestly, it has been a crazy couple of weeks / month / longer for me personally, and the channel numbers, comments, views have been higher than I would ever expect as well. And so it's all kind of been overwhelming for me, not only in the YouTube and Fire Emblem world, but otherwise work. And forgive me, I should have noticed, but I do thank Mangs for pointing it out. And I was able to go back and kind of trigger this. So we can read through them, but if you're just here for the tier list, obviously I don't want to bore you, but if you're not interested in this, go ahead and skip to the timestamp to start the tier list, and we will read through this and see you there. Jaka, Lord of Lances, and Victoria, Blazing Sword. After the war, Jaka and Victoria got married and eventually had a daughter together. Jaka kept his promise to Aelanda. Together with his wife, they visited the palace often. They became like second parents to Aemon. Coulter, Silent Shadow. Coulter put his thieving lifestyle behind him and decided to start over as a regular citizen. He spent much of his gold he had acquired to help build a new orphanage in Holtmire, ensuring kids don't have to steal to survive. Thea, Deadly Blade. Thea decided to travel the world to hone her sword skills. She traveled all over Aurora. Eventually, it is said she met someone who was her equal and fell in love with him. Whatever happened next is unknown. Angelus, Joyous Bard. Angelus continued traveling the world to spread the epic tales and songs of his companions. He sang songs about Baudiman the Brave and about Aelanda the Beautiful Maiden of Light. And of course, about Jaka, the Lord of Lances. Shom, Cynical Mage. Runa, Swift Archer. I didn't realize that I'd kind of paired them. Shom struggled to rule House Windlance and nearly fled his post several times. However, he kept facing his demons with the help of his pupil Runa. He now rules as Castle... Oh, shit. He now rules as Lord of Castle Malachor. So maybe they're not a romantic pairing. Shay, Soaring Beauty. Shay helped as much as she could to rebuild her broken house after the war. She was not the most outspoken or the most powerful, but she was the most dedicated. In time, she became more confident in herself. I always read these things weird because of the text goes so slow. But whatever, I'm dealing with it. Christina, Budding Rose. Christina eventually grew up to be a knight on par with her legendary grandfather. She definitely surpassed him. Her beauty and chivalry soon become the talk of everyone of Andaron. Lillinette, Rose Maiden. Lillinette helped oversee several hospitals being built in the capital of Malthrak. She dedicated her life to healing the sick and also wrote many wonderful plays. Many men are still trying to court her. Samuel, Rose Knight. Lord Samuel paid a dear price for his betrayal, perishing in a dungeon, broken and alone. However, his family still honors his memory and chooses to remember him for his many deeds. Theodore, King Regent. Theodore ruled Andaron with courage and wisdom, ushering in a vibrant golden age for its people. His compassion and chivalry made him loved by the people of Andaron. His reign was stable. He grew to love Aemon as if he were his own. Fred, noble knight. Fred returned to take charge of his family. He worked tirelessly to restore their name. In time, House Speargarden would once again be respected all across Andaron. Boogie, gambling thug. Boogie gambled away all his earnings from serving Jaka in 2 weeks. He was soon seen out on the streets of Mothrock mugging people again. Garam, Forest King. Garam returned to his tribe a hero, bringing with him countless stories and legends. He eventually unified all the scattered tribes into a single, unified one, becoming known as the first King of the Centaurs. That's crazy! Good for you, Garam. Zacharias, Guiding Light. After the war, the strange Lightbringer monk vanished, but not before leaving behind a mysterious scroll full of knowledge thought to be lost to the ages. Bjarki, Stout Viking. Bjarki returned to Hornheim, where he retired to a quiet life as a woodcarver. He now lives in a hut along the sea, often looking out at the ocean, thinking of his wife and children. Barrett, Battle Maiden. Barrett's feats of strength were so epic that she was constantly challenged. She thus decided to leave Hornheim to travel the world on a merchant vessel. Eventually, she became a great trader. Well, it's weird. You'd think that it would say something about her being the Jarl or whatever, but I understand why. Helga, Scotty's daughter. Helga thought she had only a year left to live, but she went on to live for almost 5. In the end, her life force was expanded, and she was buried on top of Mount Frostmoor. Her friends and family visit her grave often. Sigrid, Child of Skadi. After Helga passed away, Sigrid rose to become the new leader of Clan Skadi. She proved to be a wonderful leader and was able to restore her clan's strength. Haley, Certain Arrow. Haley took control of House Ring and returned it to its former glory. However, she soon grew restless and passed off her duties, taking to the road to live life as a simple hunter. Kurt, Ring Lord. Kurt eventually returned to his family as Lord Wilbert of House Ring once again. He worked tirelessly to correct what his sons had done, though he grieved them. He is often seen visiting their graves. Ralfnir, son of Dormund, died at Berserker Gang. Dang it. He might be one of the only characters I let die. Ariel, the Ashburn Savior. No longer known as the Ashburn Butcher, Ariel was able to overcome her reputation. She is now known as the Ashburn Savior. For the first time in a long while, the people do not live in fear of their noble overlords. Jesse, Addled Mind. Jesse struggled to deal with his inner demons. He tried his best to rule House Flameguard, but the people were outraged by Alvaro's crimes and wanted a scapegoat to put the blame on. Jesse later vanished, and his house fell to ruin. Natalie, Sword of Winter. Natalie tried to remain in House Flameguard, but the memories were too much for her. She eventually left and went back to travel the world to hone her skills with the sword. In time, she grew into a legendary figure. Aubrey, hired killer. After the war, Aubrey resigned from her position and disbanded the Thieves Guild. At least, that's the story people are being told. Many believe the guild is still active, operating in the shadows of Holtmeyer. Isabel, Steel Maiden. Isabel grew to become a legend, on par with that of her father, and eventually Galahad. To this day, many songs have been composed about her Resolute Maiden of Steel, about the Resolute Maiden of Steel. Tendaris, Dragon King. I only used him 8 times. That's kind of sad. Tendaris returned to a struggling Tiamat that was still recovering from a bloody civil war. His first years were turbulent and difficult, but he was able to get through them eventually. He has now brought stability to his nation. Jahaira, Astute Dragon. Jahaira continued to serve Tendaris as his sworn retainer. It is rumored she became his concubine, but it is difficult to know. Miriam, Selfish Knight. Miriam returned to Tiamat and took up work as a royal guard for King Tendaris. Many lazy days awaited her at the palace, which suited her fine. She spent her days taking naps, playing dice, eating, and drinking. Harriet, Sassy Cleric. Harriet returned back to her infirmary in Malfark, where she continued her work. Even though she was now old and tired, she never quit helping people in need. Albert, Retired Blade. Albert lived his remaining days in the palace. When Aemon grew older, he became his teacher. He taught the boy how to wield a sword and also the history of House Lightbringer. After a life of sorrow, he recovered his smile. Estelle, Expert Scholar. Estelle was last seen in the company of Lord Ferdinand, traveling towards Styxia. It is rumored they ended up getting lost so badly that they ended up in Tiamat. Okay. Varg, Dark Sage. After returning home to his family for a time, Varg set out traveling again. This time, he opened up a portal to a new world where everything was burning with a purple hue. Okay then. Darius, King of Styxia. King Darius proved to be an ambitious ruler, drastically changing his nation for the better. He abolished slavery and opened up trade with Andaron, Tiamat, and Hornheim. That comma is in the wrong spot. Ahmed, Undying Cohort. Ahmed served Darius well for the next 20 years, but secretly, the skeletal schemer laundered an empire of gold to pay for countless skeleton dancers. He is now being pursued by the law. Oh no. What? Khepri, Desert Rose. Khepri is a pretty cool unit. Pretty awesome portrait too. Khepri returned to Styxia with Darius and kept serving him faithfully as his lady of the court. It was rumored that they were secretly lovers, but none could ever prove it. Zari, Purple Veil. Lady Zari returned to Styxia and continued to perform as the Purple Veil, and her fame soon grew to such levels that she toured all over Aurora, to Andaron, to Tiamat, and even to the cold lands of Hornheim itself. Aisha, Sea Devil. Aisha returned home to Styxia to find her family. In the end, she didn't find her mother or father, but she was able to reunite with her sister. She brought her back to Brandon, where she was offered a job on their merchant ship. Really caught up with that one. Amelia, Monster Enthusiast. Amelia resumed her studies on terrors and kept up her travels around Aurora. However, one day, she mysteriously stopped writing to her family. It is rumored she may have perished or possibly faced an even worse fate. Madeline, stalwart retainer. She only had 20 battles? Wow. Seemed like she was a lot more useful than that. Madeline returned home to Castle Malachor and continued to serve House Windlance loyally. She is often seen visiting Jacob's grave. She now leads the Pegasus division of the House of Shomes. Okay. She now leads the Pegasus division in place of Shomes' cousins. It says cousins, right? Yeah, I don't know why that was so hard for me. I'm very sorry. Elmer. Reborn Alpha. Elmer eventually broke away from his master and started an academy for young males. He now teaches them how to embrace their masculinity and to strengthen their physique. Okay. He's a bodybuilder now. Galahad, Wall of Steel. Galahad spent 5 long years in prison, pondering his crimes against the crown. He emerged a changed man, seeking to restore House Steel to its former glory. Ayolanda, Maiden of Light, and Baudimon, brave hero. Everyone in Andaron knows the story of Baudimon and the brave, of Baudimon the brave, and Ayolanda, the Maiden of Light. Their story serves as hope for people. The dark times will always come to an end. And there's a fin. I believe that is it then. Yes, we just wanted to get the character endings in because it bugged out, unfortunately. So it was good to get them in here while we can. And now we will go to the tier list. All right, welcome to my Andaron Saga playthrough tier list. I don't really know what we call this. A run tier list? We'll call it a run tier list. As you can see, we've got all the units laid out in front of us. And we've got a big fat bench category. Can we change the color of this? Sure. Let's do the bench as gray. I don't like these colors, but oh well. I guess we're just gonna go with it because I don't want to spend too much time faffing about here. But we can go through here and really just see that we didn't really use any of these guys. I think there's a couple maybe you could argue we did. I guess Varg, we did use Varg. Where the heck does Varg go? Who do we want to do last? Is another question. Who should we do last? I don't think it matters. So, maybe we'll do Ayolanda last because yeah. All right. And Jaka too. Okay, Coulter. Coulter was... Let's see. I think I'm just going to put him A tier. Automatically. At least A tier. Coulter was, from the beginning, our utility thief. And he was actually pretty decent with combat as well. I do appreciate this game for making thieves kind of viable. Or very viable, in fact. I think if I would have trained him better, he would have been... He was still a pretty standout combat unit. It was a little bit shaky because he was kind of just weak. He had pretty low strength throughout the entire run, but with the help of his personal skill, giving him like +4 damage if the unit can't counter, and having 1 true range with daggers, and having pretty good crit rate, and I neglected to give him a killing edge for like half the game, which was really dumb. Somebody commented, literally, is like, why does Coulter not have a killing edge? I'm like, that's a really good question. This was when he was an assassin too, I think. So he was very very solid. Or no, I shouldn't say very solid. He was shaky, but his pretty good chip damage here and there, as well as having 1-2 range with daggers and the personal skill, like I said. On top of his utility as a thief, doing chests and doors. I don't think he has stealing, does he? No, he had to have stealing. I don't remember, honestly. No, he had to, right? I feel like there was something. No, okay, it was lethality that he was missing from a normal assassin. Yes, with stealing and lockpicking is huge. Automatic A tier. I don't know if he's S tier. If I would have used him more optimally, probably S tier, but we kind of early promoted him, and I didn't really bank on him being a standout combat unit. So I think A tier is pretty good. Obviously, he gets us through a lot through the game, and a lot of it is Fog of War too. There was quite a bit of Fog of War, which I think is probably good. I think normal Fire Emblem, vanilla Fire Emblem, I should say, kind of lacks on good Fog of War maps. There's like maybe one or two in the game typically, and sometimes it's not great. Sometimes it's really annoying, or the map is just huge. I don't know. Anyway, I think it's good. More good uses of Fog of War is important, I think, getting the player back into that mechanic. And obviously, Coulter helps a lot with that. So, all right, our order got screwed up because it's been a day. Spoilers, it has been a full-length day. We're gonna continue though with Lillinette. Oh boy, Lillinette. Lillinette was a real MVP. Basically our full-time staff user from day one. And I had thoughts of benching her, but really that would have been a huge mistake. Lillinette is an S tier, no doubt, in our playthrough. She's mounted, she can use magic, she's got crazy staff utility, really just in the fact that she's mounted and had the staff rank to do so, and a good magic stat as well. She capped it not far from the late game. Actually, I don't know when exactly she capped it, but she had it capped for, a while, so she got there. She was fast, she was strong, and it was good. She was a huge boon. A rescue bot, physic bot, all of that good stuff. Those were pretty much the two most important staffs, I feel like, as well as the torch staff, whatever that one was called, Illuminate or something. I don't remember what it was, but also good candidate for that. So not really much to say about her, honestly. She's got some good supports. I think I screwed up the supports on a lot of my units because I wasn't keeping track of how many I was doing. I was just doing them as they showed up, so could have been better there, but we had a B support with Garam, I think, and then 2 random ones. But onward, we will talk about Samuel. Samuel's got an interesting case. Obviously, there are spoilers in this tier list, so if you don't want spoilers, then whatever. But Samuel is a weird one because he's your Jegan, but he's not for very long, or at least not for the entire game. And honestly, I might even say bench or did not use, but and also this is not really in the right order, is it? I would say maybe even bench for Samuel. I think that's where we're gonna put him. Do another quick scan for these. Yeah, I think that's about right. Okay, Mortimer really quick. We didn't really use him. We used him for a minute, but ultimately he got the bench. So there's that. All right, Angelus, our first dancer he joins. Does he join Chapter 1? He does, actually. So that's pretty big. Chapter 1 dancer has a really high potential to being like very crucial to your run. I feel like for me, I sleep on dancers a lot because I have so much, I just have the biggest urge to use as many characters as I can. And the dancer is, always the +1 for me in my head, which it shouldn't be that way because dancers are very, very powerful. But they usually end up not taking priority over, like, say, oh, should I bring Barrett on this or not? I've already got a couple axe users, but I do like Barrett, so yeah, I'll just bring Barrett instead of Angelus. That sort of thing. But Angelus is A tier. He's a dancer. He does his job. He comes back and has late game utility. If you send him away, get the other dancer, then you can have 2 dancers and have Angelus use dark magic and give him a regalia, which is pretty huge. There's a lot of secrets in this game that I I missed a lot of like the optimal secret little unit builds, but with the support skills and all of that cool stuff. But I will talk about some of them that I used, and especially when it comes to their potential. Unfortunately, I screwed the pooch on Angelus. I was not able to give him that full support with Khepri, so he didn't retain the ability to dance. Otherwise, he would have been another even better. I don't know if he would have got quite into S tier, but that's probably where he should be. But for this playthrough, it was A. It might even have been B because of I probably benched him more than I should have. But anyways, we'll move on. Shom, I think, was very close to an S tier. I think he's an A tier for me. He enabled units like Runa, and I think that was really the main one. But he also gave supports to some other people, I believe. And he was one of our best mages throughout the game, but I think he kind of fell off in the mid-late game. He stopped leveling strength, or he stopped leveling magic, rather. And while he was still tanky, not so much tanky, but he was still very fast and had crazy res, he would sometimes fail to do meaningful damage. And that might have been just kind of peeking at the combat screen and not taking into effect he's got a pretty good chance to proc Glacies or whatever that does like an extra 25 to 30 damage of damage because of that skill, which it depends on how much res he has, but in my case it was capped towards the end, so that's why I said 25 to 30. But earlier on it's still pretty high. It's like I want to say it's over 10 in the beginning, but who knows. I'm probably making stuff up, but still he's got that crazy res growth, which does help that skill get even better and better as snowballs throughout the game. So he's also enabling a lot of the characters through supports with getting magic for Runa, and he does another one. What was the other one? I know there was another one. Oh, it's magic for Shay. So Shay would be able to use tomes, and she's got a higher magic growth and strength, and she's a Pegasus Knight, so she would have been a pretty good candidate for that as well, and been like a kind of like a Helga light, maybe, without Gale Force. I don't know how much really room there was to be using Shay over Helga, but obviously I didn't train Shay, so I didn't really get that. However, she does have that Glacies skill as well, and access to Regalia, like and the Hoarfrost. So that would have been good in the Wind Lance, or the Wind Sword, or whatever. I think. She probably gets sword on promotions, I'm guessing. But anyways, Shom was pretty good. He's pretty useful in a lot of those builds, and is good early on with the supports of these main characters here, or the first bit of characters. Baudimon's squads, as it were. Barret, I unfortunately did bench throughout the game, or over, like, gosh, I can't words. I unfortunately did bench Barret, but in the early to mid game, she was very, very good. And for that, in her participation, I'm almost wanting to put her at A, but I think she was just at B tier. I don't want to like overvalue everybody and make this tier list really lame, but it is my first tier list, so you know, don't go too crazy. And also, we did not use Bjarki, so we'll throw him up there. Barret had a very cool, unique skill that basically let her have extra crit on player phase. So if you give her that killer axe, even before she promotes to Berserker, I think she gets around 50-ish crit, plus whatever else with luck and skills, probably like 54 or something like that. I think it's 50. It's actually 15% probably, so it might be a little bit lower, 49 or something like that. And then once she is a Berserker, that goes up even more, and I think the Berserker skill is another 15%, so she's got like 30 crit on normal weapons on player phase, and then towards 60 with the killer axe. So that's a pretty cool skill. I think I early promoted her, so I think she kind of fell off towards the later part of the mid game, and that's why I ultimately benched her, especially once Aisha joined up. So it's hard to say because half of it she wasn't really around for. So maybe, I don't know if I want to say C tier, because she got us out of a lot of tricky situations and did a lot for us. And unfortunately, we did have her pick her as the Jarl, so we kind of wasted the Ragnarok on her, as we didn't really use her much after that. But Yeah, we probably should have given that to Helga. But anyways, we'll move on to Runa. I think Runa was a big fat B tier. I do kind of want to put her an A tier, but I'm trying to be more selective here. And we'll adjust this as things goes on, I'm sure. But also, we didn't really use Estelle, so we'll put her in here. She was very fast and very strong, and her movement was very helpful. She had the perk of 2 extra movement. So when she promoted as sniper, she was basically an 8-move sage without staffs, which kind of sucked. Having a mage-only unit, because staffs had such a huge utility in this game, with rescue and physic being the main ones, as I said, and many others that were situational, like the torch, and barrier was also very good in this game. So it did kind of suck to lose on a healer, where I could have used somebody like, like Estelle, who would have gotten staff rank, or Shay, who would have gotten some staff rank, I think, as a Falcon Knight. Yeah, because Madeline did. So that probably would have been a smarter pick. But Runa was interesting because she starts as an archer and in a physical class. But if you give her that A support, she does gain tomes, and her growth is better in magic. So it was an interesting build that I wanted to see, and it was really, really good. And we ended up not bringing her to the final chapter just because we got so many magic users towards the late game. So. And she was not able to use a regalia or use staves, so she ultimately lost out. But she was still very, very good, and she should be in front of Barrett, and maybe even in A tier. We'll think about it. Victoria, in the end, was Jaka's A support, his wife, and Victoria was very interesting to me since day one, and she joins in the Centaur chapter, and I think she comes with the longsword even, or whatever is effective against cavalry, which is huge because her skill is basically the brave effect on any weapon type, or any weapon. So you give her any weapon, she attacks at least twice before the counter attack, and 4 times if she doubles them with her speed, like normal doubling. So that's huge. That is a very huge potential. And I think I tried my best to really utilize that where we could. Like boss killing was a big one, using Shamshir's killing edges and effective weapons to try to one-round bosses before they even had a chance, because some of them had some high crit. Some of them just had insane health pools, things like that. And Victoria is an obvious S tier, as she was mega useful throughout the entire game. 8 movement on a mount once she promoted. Kanto, sword locked, yes, but she did have access to flame swords to at least give her a little bit of 1-2 range, although not the best because her magic wasn't great, but still attacking at least twice helped that as well. Lance Reaver, Killing Edge, effective weapons with the long sword, Armor Slayer, and the Silver Blade. That was all really good for her. And then, of course, her support with Jaka, which gave her a +5 damage per attack when they were next to each other, which was very, very situational, but it did help a lot when it was there. And then their support in general was also very good. So, yep, Victoria is a true MVP as well. And we'll move on to Garam, who I really did sleep on in the early to mid game. I thought, he's got good movement and good strength, but I don't think he's gonna last very long with his lower speed growth. But his HP, his defense, and his crazy strength and his skill made him very important, as well as having bows when I wasn't really using any other bow users. When dragons and wyverns started to become a thing, I don't remember if dragons were weak to bows in this game. I don't think they were, but anyways. When it came to more flying units, Garam became more important, as I thought, especially that Tamaya arc. Those are big times for Garam because he's strong and he can use the bows and he has really good movement and good defense as well. So he turned out to be pretty good. His skill lets lets him, I think it gives him, the more he moves to attack, like the longer he travels to hit that attack, the more crit he gets. And I don't remember if it's more crit and more strength, or if it's one or the other, something like that. But that was a pretty cool skill that came in handy. So the longbows was crazy utility. Garam's an A tier. He's up there. No Kanto, which is a shame, but it does kind of balance him out. He also has insane con, so he basically can use any weapon without being weighed down. He also has Regalia access in Ash Cleaver, which I didn't really understand until the very, very final chapter. Nobody really talked about that as far as I knew, so that was pretty interesting. Yeah, Garam was pretty big. Unfortunately, I benched him for a while, I think, so didn't really get that S tier contribution, I feel like. Still very helpful, though. Okay, next is Zacharias. Zacharias is another... most of these are going to be pretty highly rated because I used them. I did not use these guys, so, I would be putting Thea in F tier. We can leave her, and Natalie. We'll put Elmer in F tier, too. Boogie, you're in F tier, too. Because Boogie got himself killed in his first join chapter, but he does give you another chance. Elmer, I reset for Elmer at least once, probably twice in this join chapter, but I had so many good mages already. Natalie, I tried like 5 different times to train her up a little bit, never panned out, and made things harder for me. Thea, I just don't feel like she's very good, so we'll leave her in F tier. Also, Ralph Near. Oh, wait. All the trainees are in F tier right now, except for Christina. He died on his chapter, and he's like the only person I let die, so he's in F tier for sure. All right, that's pretty mean, but I don't know. Just for the sake of occupying the F tier, we'll do that. Okay, so Zacharias. We'll just say he's an automatic S tier. It's a spoiler if you saw my community poll the other day as well. I had 4 of my S tier carries, hard carries as I call them. But Zacharias was huge. Again, I kind of slept on him in the early to mid game because I think it was just because he wasn't doubling a whole lot. I knew his growths were insane. But I think he just wasn't doubling a lot, where Barrett was maybe a little more easy to use on combat, but Zacharias really shines with his staff utility as well as his combat. It's combat. His combat starts off really good, especially in his join chapter where he is basically super effective against monsters, which I think that's his skill. So he's always super effective against monsters. Which is huge. And his Leaven Axe is crazy too. It's a 1-2 range magic axe. And then you give him I gave him a hand axe basically, and then more staffs. But if you give him other axes, it's probably why it was harder for me to train him. But he just gets crazy. And towards the end game, he is crazy. He's still a little bit slow. Mine only had 22 speed, I think, when most of my units were 25 plus to cap and 30-ish, So he was one of my slower units without Hope's Fire's bonus, but he gets the Regalia. He's effective against terrors. 1-2 range with the Leaven Axe. Being a personal weapon is crazy. And S rank stabs and can use the Lumina. All of that is pretty nuts. He also, I forget if it's him or if it's Albert that repairs it. I'm pretty sure it's Zacharias that repairs the Lumina every chapter. So that's also a huge one. Just downright S tier. Growths are insane. Bases are good. Everything about him is pretty much good. If you want to deck him out as a combat unit, you can do that. If you want to make him basically your dedicated healer, you could do that as well. He capped magic, I believe. He was one of the ones I gave an Eternal Seal to, so he did need a little bit of help, but I don't remember if I early promoted him either. Wait, he comes promoted, idiot. Alright, anyways, moving on to Jahaira. Jahaira is our only Wyvern Knight in the game that we used. I guess we have this chick, Miriam. But Wyvern Knight, she was very good. She was rocky to start, but she did grow into herself very quickly. She did grow very, very fast, and realized that towards the mid late game, the late mid game, like she's already like level 10 plus as a Wyvern Lord. This is kind of crazy, and her personal skill makes her very dodgy. So she doesn't take a whole lot of damage typically, but can also dish it out. And she's got weapon triangle control on promotion. She gets swords, axes, and lances. 8 movement and flyer, obviously huge. And then she comes with the Worm Slayer, the Worm Blade, or I don't remember what it was called, but it was a personal weapon. If you send her off and she comes back, which I did, it also promotes her automatically and gives her some levels. But she gets that personal weapon that is it's a Reaver weapon, but effective against Wyverns as well. And most Wyverns probably are using lances, so it's even better. So pretty good. I will say there wasn't a whole lot of room for her towards the late game, and I don't really know why that was. I think mainly that I had a little bit of Christina bias. I also had Isabel, and Jaka, and Victoria kind of doing a lot of the same things she does, as well as Garam. None of them were flyers other than Helga, but Helga was also a mage. But anyways, she fell off a little bit towards the late game, and she kind of had a rocky start, and then I didn't use her until a little bit later, so we'll keep her in B tier for now. All right, Christina. This is a tough one because it falls into bias, and I think I realized a little bit late throughout the game that I didn't have like a solid, and this was part of the thing with Jahairas, I didn't have like a solid mounted unit lance user. I had Victoria, who was great, but she wasn't very bulky, and she was, just a little bit frail. I had Jocko, wasn't mounted. I had Isabel, wasn't mounted. I wanted like a solid cavalier. I didn't really have one. Garam, pretty good, but wasn't like very well rounded. And I figured a paladin would be the best choice. Just needed that paladin to be filled. Obviously Fred, not going to use Fred. Probably should have tried to use Fred, but Christina's growths were a little bit better. Honestly, not by much. And the trainee thing, a little extra level, a little bit of extra levels would help. Theodore, he's kind of like a split character, split growths, but also Christina is too, I guess. So maybe that would have been a better choice, but still, I went for Christina and tried to train her up, and it was a bit of a slog. I will be honest, it was definitely a slog. And I think she's an A tier. Maybe we knock her to B tier because getting her there was very rough and took a while, and it required a lot of favoritism. I gave her the whatever the item is that boosts your growths. I don't remember what it was. I gave her stat boosters. I gave her an Eternal Seal, I think. I gave her at least one, maybe two. I think I gave her the cursed boots or whatever at some point. So I put a lot into her, and she did eventually cap out basically everything, but it really was a lot of favoritism and special, usage there. So we'll put her on B tier, although she turned out great and eventually got to use the Rose Thorn. It was literally the final chapter that we were grinding weapon rank still. So B tier seems appropriate here. It was just a misuse, but we got her caught up. All right, Ariel. This is one that I kind of benched midway through as well, and I'm wondering if I should just put this in the bench category, but there aren't really any other units that I did that with, so I think we'll keep her here. She's a little bit similar to Barrett, where she's kind of benched midway through, but she was benched even earlier. I would put her in C tier, but I don't want her to be in a tier all by herself, but we'll see. Ariel was pretty solid. We early promoted her for some extra bulk on the team. She comes as an Axe Cavalier and basically has got pretty good pretty good HP, strength, and defense. Shaky on speed, but I think she was like a 40% growth and a pretty decent base, so I figured she would grow pretty nicely. But ultimately, we had Barret, we had Garam, we had Zacharias, we had, Baudimon, we had Aisha, we had Isabel. We had so many axes that one of them had to go. Actually, more than one of them had to go, and she was the first to kind of hit the bench. These other ones kind of had a different niche. Barret with the crit, and then Aisha came to replace her basically with the crit. We had Zacharias with staffs and magic. We had Garam with bows and having crazier health, HP and defense. And obviously Isabel. Isabel is a hard one. I feel like she wasn't as immediately useful as some of these other S tiers, but she definitely got there, and she got there pretty quickly. She got Nihil, which basically eliminates the risk of any scary skills on the bosses or anybody really. Like, there's a lot of scary skills that can just randomly happen, and there's that just chance of everything going wrong, which I kind of go back and forth in Fire Emblem, like if that's cool. Like, oh, I've got a 25% chance to do twice the damage, and I got a 33% crit, so even if you survive that times 2, if both of them proc, you're definitely dead and there's no way to survive it. I guess that's just sort of the nature of it. If we have all these skills and things at our disposal, we probably should be able to play against it sometimes. And certain things like Isabel is a way to get around them if you play right and play smartly. You can do that. So she's your answer to a lot of those scary things that you don't want to risk. But that's only if you get her to an A support with Albert, which isn't always the easiest, because Albert, I find, was, well, we'll save it for his discussion. But Isabel, definitely a fantastic unit. I found that she was kind of struggling towards the mid-late game, but she did catch up again. I think the reason was she wasn't like crazy fast enough to double everything. She was still taking a little bit of damage here and there, and her output wasn't huge, but it did come around, and part of that was weapon related. Like, I didn't have her totally kitted out all the time. More effective weapons would have been nice. Maybe more brave weapons, but I did have brave weapons on her pretty much all the time. So I think it was her failing to double, which is understandable as she's a general. But yeah, sort of felt a little off there. But then, her utility comes back, and making her into a Steel Knight would probably just alleviate that more. Giving her magic, although I don't know how much magic she would have really been able to use. It was kind of high. I think it was almost 20 or around there. So decent. Weird Sage could have, created that build or made it better. But I think we'll leave it at S for now. I'm not sure about that one. Definitely high A at least. But S, I don't know. Okay, Albert. Albert. Aside from his support with Isabel, I did not find him tremendously useful other than his join chapter. And for that, I basically probably should give him at least B. He gets us out of that chapter. Without him, I don't know how or if it's possible to get out of the jail or the cellars, the jails, whatever, against the Steel Knights, because his weapon was effective against the generals. And his staff utility, again, similar to Zacharias, he's kind of insane that way. He's got less growth, joins later, and I think swords are just less useful in general, so not so good as Zacharias, which makes sense because Zacharias is literally like an ancestor. This guy's just a Lightbringer. He's kind of older. You know, he's supposed to be good and everything, but not that good. And the rune sword really helps him as well. That's a pretty big boon to his kit. But I was a little sad that it just ran out, and I was like, do I repair? Do I not? I got another one. Okay, it ran out already on somebody else. I don't know. I don't think I used it very smart. It's very smart-like. Very, very wisely. So I feel like B tier is good for him. I want to lower him, but I feel like the support and the join chapter and Lumina access S rank staff utility is pretty big. So we'll leave him in B for now. Now, we have Aisha. Aisha, I think, is another B. I think most of these are going to be B or higher just because these are the people we stuck to using. I guess I will put Estelle in C tier. We did use her for a minute, but she didn't hook me like these other mages did. Obviously, Shom had, you know, it was probably between Runa and Estelle at this point. She's got like this skill. I forget exactly what it does, but I think it cancels. Is it a brave effect if you don't have a counterattack, or is it a no counterattack? Range. I don't remember. It's something, I don't know. But she had some kind of unique skill that made her pretty good. But I didn't end up using her very long. She's useful, but not really. This feels like a cop-out answer, but we're going to leave her in C. Anyone else that I kind of used, but didn't really? I don't think so. So, I think we're fine. Aisha was really good. She was very bulky, very fast, very strong. A lot of HP. She was one of our more brawly units. And she might deserve A tier, but I did bench her for quite a bit during the mid to late game. Which sucks. I don't know. That's tough. I'll leave her in B for now. Helga, automatic S tier. She is a mounted mage, a flying mage with Canto, right? And 8 move. She's got dark magic, anima magic, and she got the skill Gale Force, which was insanely OP. Basically, if you defeat an enemy in player phase, you get to move again and attack again, or do whatever again. It's like a free dance. So it creates some interesting strategies where you can kind of fly across the map if you can. Yeah. So she was obviously pretty busted. She had access to effective tomes like Duelam and Exorcism, effective against Armor Knights and Terrors. She had Nosferatu. Flux is great. Let's see. She had Fenrir. She had the critty spells for a while. Thoron access. Not really much use of doing anima with all the great dark magic in the game, but Scorch is a good one. She also got to use the Feely Shield. I forget what it's called in this game, but it makes her immune to regular wind magic and arrows. So it was good. She had good supports too. I don't really think we fleshed them out very far, but like Varg and Darius, which would have been good if I didn't fill them both up by mistake as well. Which leads us, I guess, into Varg, because Helga, honestly, just insane. She could one round a lot of people, crits a lot of people, Nosferatu. Also, I forgot, Life Taker wasn't her other skill, which if she kills somebody, she gains back 50% HP, so she basically doesn't need Nosferatu half the time. So another big one. She's pretty self-sufficient in a lot of ways. So Varg. I think Varg, for me, I don't know. I feel like Varg is kind of a C tier. Obviously, I'm going to put him in B because I know he's better than that, but I didn't really love Varg's stats. They did get pretty good towards the end, but The main reason we used him was for... I thought it was going to be for supports, but it ended up being for regalia usage. And it was... I always forget what this is called. Dark... No, that's Darkhold. Flame Guard? Nope. Void Flame? Something like that. Dark Void. The regalia for him was crazy. It does like 40 damage, 40 base power. That's Pokemon speak. 40 might, and is effective against certain things, and is heavy as shit, but 40 damage plus like 25 plus magic. It's kind of crazy. So he was pretty useful sometimes, and then obviously staff rank. Decent supports that I screwed up, I think. So, yeah. He basically replaced Runa towards the end. He with staffs and more stronger dark magic usage and things like that. He kind of just replaced Runa, I think. But Khepri, I think, is an automatic A tier. She basically replaced Angelus when we got her, because it was a choice. It was basically let Angelus leave and we get Khepri, or Angelus stay, we don't get Khepri. And I think Khepri was more bulky, actually, more tanky than Angelus was, with HP and defense, and then probably dodginess as well. She had good supports. I think we got her was it a Darius support? I don't remember, but probably screwed him up because Darius' supports were busted. Or, yeah. He gets an automatic ace support with Ahmed, which I forgot about, so. Speaking of Darius, we have Darius. I think Darius, for me, this playthrough, honestly, I want to say he's a B tier. He didn't really contribute a whole lot. Most of his contribution was Ahmed, which is big, but I think I missed out on his Ogbunabali 3 range. I didn't figure that out until the last couple chapters, which is embarrassing, but yeah, his stats weren't insanely good. He had pretty low speed, so he would actually get doubled sometimes and not double anybody. But his tome was pretty powerful, so that didn't really matter too much. Just felt like he wasn't doing a lot of damage compared to my faster units. And most of his time is spent staying off the front lines, making sure Ahmed's up, and attacking from range. So, I don't know. These two, I feel like I should have liked better, but just didn't. I don't think they got their real time to shine. Or maybe they should have came a little bit better. No, that's probably not the case. But they had just little things about them that made me keep them around, even though I didn't really love using them. Ahmed was pretty big. He was big fodder, so surviving some of those chapters was key with Ahmed. Varg's big damage potential was helpful, but if it didn't one-shot somebody, it was like not the best. I mean, it was still good, but obviously that one-shot potential was really nice. And he, like I said, he did come around, grew into himself, which was really cool to see. But started off, was like, nah, I don't know if I want to use this guy. Madeline was probably C tier. I think I had way better ideas for her, but they didn't really come to fruition. And she had the skill of plus 20 res on player phase, I think, or on a initiating battle. So effectively could have like about 40 res attacking somebody, which could come in handy, especially against some of the stronger mages in the late game. And on top of that, you could use the barrier sword with her and gain another 10 res, bringing her to 50. Is that right? So I didn't get to see how much damage she would do to Mortimer, but Mortimer might not have been able to do much to her, which would have been a pretty funny thing to see. And a lot of the things in the final chapter, like those war monks, weren't really an issue for her, especially on player's phase. Yeah. Not a whole lot to say. She was a pretty nice flying staff bot. Other than that, she would do some chip damage here and there as well, which was also good. But nothing really amazing. She probably should be B tier, but I don't want such a fat B tier, you know? All right, Aubrey, for the time she was in the game, I want to say she was an S tier. We gave her the Eternal Seal so she could grow just a little bit more. She capped out some strength, I think, speed. Got even more bulky with HP, defense, and res. And was just overall kind of a killing machine. She has the potential to teach Coulter the lethality skill, which is nice, but that you get that instead of getting Galahad. So we obviously got Galahad. But with the Peshcats, lethality, her crazy stats, she's kind of unstoppable and really just trivialized some enemies in the game, and we just one-shotted them from range, and it was just that easy. As well as some of the walls that were countering you in the final chapter. So she was pretty crazy for the time she was with us. And I feel like S tier is probably appropriate. Maybe not, just because it feels like she was barely really with us. But we're going to leave her there for now. Galahad I think is at least B tier. His Koru Scare, whatever that tome is, pretty much does it for him. He's got high magic, and then he's got that tome, which is basically a brave tome. So big damage from him. He can wield all sorts of physical weapons too, and is just a wall. The king, or the head of the Steel Knights, obviously is going to be a brick wall. So that was pretty good. I don't remember his skills, but I think it basically was like can't be stolen from, can't be like killed, stuff like that. He's pretty good, but we didn't get a whole lot of chance to use him, and I just don't feel like he really came that much handy. Like compared to Aubrey, he didn't really do a lot for us, if I recall correctly, but he could have. Okay, we're getting down to it. Baudimon is interesting. Obviously, we kind of lose control of him in about half the game, but we're going to put Baudimon as B tier. I just don't remember him being all that crazy of a contributing factor. I think it was probably due to my Jagan mindset of he's our pre-promote. We won't feed him as much kills. So we can get everyone else to grow to be on that level as well. And then maybe it's more of an even playing field. But I had no idea what exactly was going to happen. So I don't think I really used him a whole lot, to be honest. Being a hero lord was pretty interesting, and I always thought that was neat. Kind of having a Jagan lord. And I always figured he'd have a promotion. You know, it's like, no, this can't be it. He's got to have like a unique class after this or something. Obviously, that's not the case, but I was intrigued by his design, and I was happy that he could use steel blades and stuff like that without being weighed down. And this is the part of the game where this was, 8 months ago I started this, so it was quite a long time ago, so it may just be that my memory is bad and I don't really remember using him a whole lot, because I was more concentrated on things like Victoria and Zacharias and Garam and Runa and Barrett and all these units over my Jagan Lord guy here. But moving on, Jaka. It feels a little bit unfair for me to just slap him in S tier, because I do think Jaka is really good. I do. I just don't know if he deserves S tier, really. I think he was always very, very solid. Even in the beginning, I was like, I'm liking this Jaka guy. I always liked having soldier halberdiers. in Fire Emblem. I thought that was just interesting because I think you just don't get many of them, so it's always kind of cool. They usually turn out pretty good, like Nephany. Nephany's awesome. So just excited to have a infantry lance user, you know? Little did I know Jocko would become the main character, and now he's got to be busted. All of a sudden he's promoting, and he's getting a special class. He's getting a special weapon. He's insane. He is really good. He can use swords, which I was really excited for because we lost Baudimon. We lost that sword access, and look at these other units. How many of them wield swords that isn't Victoria? Because I didn't really count Victoria. She was very unique and very player phase heavy oriented. She couldn't really take a lot of hits, so I wanted Jocko to be able to fill that role a little better like Baudimon was, because we've got a shit ton of axe users, a shit ton of mages, and no real sword units here. The closest I had was like, that's why I was so focused on training Natalie for a while. I was like, all right, my sword units down here are all on the bench. I got this dude, and I got okay, there's just not very many sword units in the game. Albert doesn't really count. He's magic focused and also not very bulky. Coulter could be that, but he's a thief, and we early promoted him, and he wasn't that great with combat. He was just kind of promoted to not fall off and be more of a liability, because I wasn't really using him for combat so much. But of course, Isabel had sword utility, which was good, but just not a whole lot she could do with it, being lance and axes too, because those are just better usually. But Sholm had swords too. Yes, he was kind of, flimsy, didn't have a lot of health, was weak. He didn't have a lot of strength either, so that was a bit of a wash as well. Obviously Jahaira got swords as well, but again, after Jocko was the sword unit, so Jocko's an S tier. He was always good. The Allspice, his personal brave weapon was really good with the brave effect and the Reaver effect. So it was essentially an Axe Reaver that was a brave Axe Reaver. So that was really good. Having swords, getting the Lance Reaver, and having other heavy swords like the Iron Blade was good. And then the Lux Hosta, another personal weapon, also very good. And then support with Victoria helped a lot too. She also had a support with Jahaira and Isabel, which made him insanely dodgy and gave him a lot of crit as well. So, yep, Jocko, an amazing lord, I think. I think it's pretty cool to have a peasant, a commoner, average mercenary guy be the main character. I think that was a pretty good idea, because we've got that sort of with Baudimon, but he still is a noble, and this is more so in line with like Ike, opposed to all the other lords in the games, where he kind of comes from nothing. His parents or his dad died in the plague. They didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have any like political reach or political power, with nobility. He just was friends with Baudimon, who didn't care for that stuff as well. And then obviously his tie to Baudimon and Elanda being the driving force through his motivation of basically steering the game where it goes. I thought that was pretty cool. We rarely get that perspective in Fire Emblem. So that was good to see. Because then, like in Radiant Dawn, forgive me if I'm wrong, but like Ike kind of becomes not a noble still, but he's still pretty sick, and he's like well respected, and he's got power. Again, I didn't really pay attention to a lot of the story in those games, but I don't know. Anyways, we got Elanda. This is kind of a lame last pick, actually, because again, she kind of becomes unavailable for half the game. But I will put her in A tier, at least. She may be an S tier because she's also just constant viability, constant utility with high rank staffs, and comes as a bishop. So She doesn't have like bad stats. She's got pretty good growths, if I remember correctly. And she's always there to use like Lumina, Physic, Rescue, Torch, Barrier, all those things that we value so much. There's so much staff utility here. And that's why I kept 1, 2, sort of 3, 4, 5, sort of 6. Like a ton of staff users around when normally you have maybe 2 or 3 in a Fire Emblem playthrough. But this one really did call for, let's have a lot of staffs. Like Physic almost every turn. So yeah, Ilonda, huge utility there. Supports with Baudimon and Zacharias, actually, I think. Those were good. And then obviously when she returns, she goes crazy and is insanely powerful and gets a personal weapon as well. Or was it a Regalia? I don't remember. But again, still crazy S ranks staves and just very powerful with magic, very res heavy. Very good unit, if not very limited. She's kind of like that. Oh my god, she's kind of like that Goto archetype, or the Athos. Just, you know, insanely powerful magic user in the end game. But, yeah, so she was very good. Very good, even though she was only available for some of it. And, yeah, I guess that's my tier list. I'm kind of sad with how many... I mean, it's just, that's how it is by nature, I guess. Obviously, we stuck with these guys, so they were helpful. We didn't really end up benching a lot. Maybe Barrett does belong in C tier, but her contributions early game, they were pretty good. Albert, I would love to put in C tier because his combat was next to nothing aside from the first chapter, but that's mostly because I benched him for a lot of it, I think, and he just didn't grow. Madeline maybe is another candidate for C tier because she doesn't really do a lot, although she could have. It was very situational. Galahad was really good, but honestly, I don't remember him doing a lot, being very impactful. And we'll keep him there. Baudimon, I don't really think I can find myself to lower him anymore, but yeah. Runa was very good, maybe even needs to go up higher, but it doesn't really make sense to have her above these two since I picked them over her, essentially. I don't know. Yeah. And really my bias, me recognizing my own bias keeps me from putting Christina higher, because I do think she probably deserves to be A tier with how she performed in the late game. But I don't know if I'll get flamed for that. It's like, we worked really hard to get her to where she was and favored her very heavily, so it's like, you know. Aisha shouldn't go any lower, but I did bench her for a while, so I wonder. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this list. Maybe I might even do that. As valuable as dancers are, Angelus, I feel like, did I not use him a whole lot? I had him benched quite a bit, but also Kepri was a much better dancer, I feel, and I brought her a lot more, I think. So Angelus also was the root of a lot of my skill mishaps, or support mishaps, just as I wasn't paying attention on like doing it correctly or optimally, and I didn't know that some of them required like A supports to get perks and stuff, although the Runa one should have told me that, but I didn't realize like everybody's got that opportunity basically to get a decent skill through support or weapon rank. So now that we've evened it out quite literally, I don't know. Am I happy with that?
Okay, I'm back. It's been a couple days. I've done some rethinking on this here tier list, and there's some things that I don't totally think I agree with. And we'll start with Samuel on the bench. And yes, he mostly rode the bench, I'm pretty sure. Granted, it's been a long time since I started the playthrough, so my memory is honestly pretty shaky. But helping us through the... Why did that just get louder? I don't like that. Samuel helping us through the early game, I think was pretty good. I really, again, don't remember using him a ton, but we'll put him in a solid B tier for being a good Jagan. He has solid bases, good weapon ranks, good weapons, started weapons, and obviously being an early game paladin, huge. And he's going in B tier. I think these guys, I didn't really use Thea, so that's maybe not so fair, but I want Boogie in F tier just because he belongs there. Maybe he can at least front the F tier. The 3 trainees obviously don't probably deserve F tier, but in my run, they all pretty much sucked. And Christina probably should get docked points for being a trainee and getting that heavy favoritism, as I mentioned. But we made it happen, and she became amazing, which is, you know, that's kind of the whole thing with trainees, is you favor them incredibly hard, and they can grow into something good. But these 3, especially Rausten didn't even get a chance, but these 2, not so much Elbert, mostly Natalie. I tried multiple times, got nowhere, so she gets the F tier. She took up a valuable slot in several chapters, and then created unnecessary risk and worry for me when I could have probably been using Barrett or I don't know, somebody else in here. Sigrid is another one of the trainees, I guess, but once I looked at her bases or her growth rates, I was like, nope, not doing that. The next one, it was Morty, who rode the bench in this version of the tier list, but I'm gonna put him as an A tier for when we did have him in availability. I didn't really go over ground rules on how I was gonna do this tier list, but I feel like it should be not so much on the contribution overall, with availability in mind. I mean, maybe that is the way to do it, but when we did have Morty, he was good. He was a good staff bot, and he had the clone, the summon ability, which was huge. And literally, maybe did we have him like 1 or 2 chapters? I don't even know, to be honest. But he was definitely taking Albert's spot, because Albert was just not very good for us. And again, Alonda should go up into S tier. When her availability was, when we had her, she was one of our main staff bots again, and she was also offensively pretty competent. And then in the late game, the end game, she was very, very powerful, obviously. And that, I think, deserves to put her in S tier. And with this lineup, I think that's pretty solid. You know, I do think maybe Jahaira deserves to go up a tier, being our bulky, our main flyer throughout the game. We didn't really have any other ones, if I remember correctly. So yeah, and maybe I'm maybe putting Baudimon in A tier, because again, in the early game, he sort of serves as our Jagan, and being fairly competent right off the bat. Like, he one-shots a lot of people in the first couple chapters, especially with the... Why does the volume keep getting louder? It's so annoying. Especially with things like the Steel Blade and the Silver Sword. Well, we didn't get the Silver Sword from Cassandra, but having access to 1-2 range, hand axes, steel axes, iron blades, all that stuff was really good. Obviously, Hero's a great class. Baudimon was pretty good, and I think for the time we spent with him, he did contribute a lot here. Okay, and Darius. I kind of wish Darius and Ahmed were separate entities, but we're going to kind of average it out. I think that maybe Varg goes down a tier. I'm looking back, I don't really see Varg being all that useful for us. So he was able to do like big one-shot plays with whatever the hell Dark Void or whatever was called, but I just don't think it came up very often, and he just kind of became a staff bot, a bit of a staff bot. And some of the Dark Tomes were good with like effective damage, like Exorcism and Duelim and stuff, and Dark Spikes, but that was just Helga but worse. And I don't know. I don't know how to really feel about it. Darius is only up here because of Ahmed, I think. And I think we'll move Barrett up to B tier because she did contribute a lot to the early and mid game. But definitely fell off and eventually was benched, so I don't know. Madeline I kind of have struggles with because I almost feel like she should be B tier for her potential, but she just didn't really apply a lot of it, so... yeah, I think this is kind of it. I think this is maybe where we leave it. I'm having... part of me wonders if Isabel really deserves to be up here, because while she was great and kind of filled out all her stats, she didn't... I'm wondering if she really carried like the rest of these characters. S-rank staves is huge. The utility of them in this game are immense, and I think just having S-rank staffs and high magic alone was very, very useful. You know, obviously mobility, Jaka being competent the entire time. These two being lethal as all hell, as well as Victoria. And Zacharias, again, staff rank and being lethal in his own ways with Hope's Fire and the Leave an Axe. Isabel had not huge combat. I mean, she did, but Nihil really did do a lot for her, and obviously taking Galahad's chapter, she did do a lot. So I think I'm going to leave her there in S tier. And yeah, Angelus probably should go into A with Zari. Or, is that her name? Zari? Yeah. I think I might have called her Kepri before. But, yeah, I think maybe this is where we leave it. I think this is where we leave it. Sorry for the random last change up at the end, but I just was watching this back and was thinking, maybe this could move a little bit. Anyways.
Yeah, I guess this is my, my official Andaron Saga hard mode blind playthrough tier list. We went in blind mostly. I sort of spoiled myself towards the late game of certain things, mostly just how to get certain characters. I would not have been able to get Aubrey. I would not have been able to. Well, I don't know. This one I feel still a little cheap on, because we didn't really win that battle. It took like 4 tries, and it was on some misses and crits, I think. So, you know, a little bit lucky there, but I think this is where we end it. So thank you for watching the tier list. If you enjoyed this, let me know. I do want to do more tier lists of some kind in the future. These playthrough tier lists are kind of, I don't know how I feel about it, because it does sort of lead me to put everyone in B, A, and S tier, and I don't think that's very exciting. With the game that I know better, I can do more bad tiers, because that's always fun. But obviously this is my first playthrough, and I don't think I'm going to be playing it, at least on the channel, again anytime soon. I want to, but I should look into something else for now. So anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you're excited for the next series. I am. I still don't know what I'm going to do. So if you want to, sound in the echo chamber, let me know what you want to see next after we finish Fire Emblem 7. Please let me know. I've got a bunch of ROM hacks on the list, and The Last Promise just came back into my life, so maybe it's that, but I kind of don't want it to be. It's a thing. So anyways, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.